Voiceover begins. A family's deepest dream turns into a nightmare? You waited years for children, only to see your husband abandon 4 newborns the moment he saw their skin. This brutal reality will ignite your outrage and compassion. Where are you watching from today? Stay till the end for the shocking truth. The sterile hospital hallway echoed with Dr. Patricia Moore's footsteps as she hurried toward the waiting room, her heart heavy with the news she had to deliver. 25 years of medical practice hadn't prepared her for situations like this one. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, she called out, scanning the waiting area. The young couple stood up quickly, Chris and Marta Bennett, both in their early 30s, with a picture of suburban perfection, blonde, blue-eyed, and dressed in expensive casual clothes. They'd spent years trying to have children and finally, through a fertility clinic, Marta had become pregnant with quadruplets. How is she? How are the babies? Chris asked immediately. Please follow me to my office, Dr. Moore said gently. Once seated in the privacy of her office, Dr. Moore took a deep breath. Mrs. Bennett and all 4 babies are healthy, she began, noticing their immediate relief, but there's something we need to discuss. She slid 4 photographs across her desk. 4 beautiful newborn babies with dark skin and tight black curls looked back at them. Mara's face drained of color. There's been a mistake, these aren't our children. I'm afraid there's no mistake, Dr. Moore explained carefully. We've confirmed these are the embryos that were implanted. However, it appears there was a mix-up at the fertility clinic with the donor materials. Chris's face hardened. You're telling me these aren't our biological children? Genetically, no, but legally, as the birth mother and the parents who underwent the procedure, this is unacceptable, Chris cut her off, standing abruptly. We specifically chose donors who matched our features. This is negligence. We'll be suing the clinic. Dr. Moore had anticipated this reaction but was still taken aback by the coldness in his voice. Mr. Bennett, I understand this is shocking, but 4 healthy babies have just been born, they need their parents. Marta hadn't spoken, she was staring at the photos, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the images. They're so tiny, she whispered. Would you like to see them? Dr. Moore asked gently. Before Marta could respond, Chris took her hand. We need to discuss this privately, he said firmly. Dr. Moore nodded. Of course, take some time, but please remember those 4 babies in the nursery need parents who love them. As the couple left, Dr. Moore saw the conflict in Mara's eyes, a mixture of shock, disappointment, and something else, a flicker of maternal instinct fighting against her husband's obvious rejection. Later that evening, Nurse Elizabeth Jackson was completing her rounds when she noticed Bennett entering the nursery. She smiled, thinking he'd come to see his children, but her smile faded as she observed his cold demeanor. He stood over the cribs containing his 4 newborns, looking at them with detachment. They're beautiful, Elizabeth offered, approaching quietly. Chris didn't look up. This was not the plan, he said simply. Babies rarely are, Elizabeth replied, but they have a way of creating their own plans, don't they? When he finally looked at her, Elizabeth was chilled by the emptiness in his eyes. We can't take them, he said. We can't be their parents. Elizabeth's heart sank. Mr. Bennett, we've made our decision, he interrupted. We've already contacted our lawyer, the fertility clinic is at fault here, not us. But what about the babies? Elizabeth asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They're not our responsibility, he said, turning to leave. And your wife, does she feel the same way? Chris hesitated just for a moment. Our position is united, he said finally. After he left, Elizabeth looked down at the 4 sleeping infants. Don't worry, little ones, she murmured, we'll figure something out. The following morning, Dr. Moore received the formal notice. The Bennetts were relinquishing all parental rights to the quadruplets. They would be pursuing legal action against the fertility clinic but wanted nothing to do with the children. Dr. Moore sat heavily in her chair, considering the 4 babies who were now effectively orphans from birth. She couldn't help but think of her own sister, Monica, who had been trying to adopt for years with her husband. They'd been turned down multiple times due to what the agencies called demographic challenges, a thinly veiled reference to the fact that they were a black couple in their 40s. This might be fate, she whispered to herself, reaching for her phone. What Dr. Moore didn't know was that at that very moment, Marta Bennett was sitting alone in her car in the hospital parking lot, sobbing uncontrollably. In her hand was a small knitted baby hat she had made months ago when her dreams of motherhood were still intact. She hadn't been allowed to see the babies. Chris had insisted it would only make things harder. "I'm sorry," she whispered to no one, torn between the life she had planned and the unexpected one that had just arrived. "I'm so sorry." As she started her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a terrible mistake, one that would haunt her for the rest of her life. But what choice did she have? Chris had been clear, it was either the babies or him, and as she drove away from the hospital, leaving 4 newborns behind, she had no way of knowing how their paths would cross again or how the choice she made that day would return to her life in ways she could never imagine. Hold on, what if those abandoned babies found a way to rise above this betrayal? Keep watching to see how their story unfolds. "Monica, they're perfect," Dr. Patricia Moore said, watching her sister gaze in wonder at the 4 babies in the hospital nursery. Monica Moore pressed her palm against the glass, tears streaming down her face. After 7 years of failed adoption attempts and heartbreak, she could hardly believe what her sister was suggesting. "All 4 of them?" Monica asked, her voice trembling. "They'd let us adopt all 4? "It won't be easy," Patricia cautioned. "For newborns is a tremendous responsibility, but yes, it's possible. The biological parents have relinquished all rights, and the hospital social worker believes keeping the quadruplets together would be ideal." Monica's husband, Derek, stood beside her, his expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. A high school math teacher with a calm demeanor, he had always dreamed of a house full of children. "We'd need a bigger house," he said thoughtfully. "I'd probably have to take on extra tutoring jobs, and I'd have to put my business on hold," Monica added. She ran a small bakery that had become popular in their neighborhood. "But we'd make it work," they said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. Patricia squeezed her sister's hand. "I'll help however I can, we all will." 2 weeks later, after expedited paperwork and numerous meetings with social workers, Monica and Derek brought the quadruplets home. They had named them Alan, Zara, Isaiah, and Diane, names that represented strength, brilliance, salvation, and faith. Their modest 3-bedroom home in a diverse suburb of Chicago suddenly felt alive with the sounds of babies. Friends, family, and neighbors rallied around them, donating cribs, strollers, and countless packages of diapers. The local church organized a meal train that would last for months. Late one night, as Monica sat in the nursery feeding Diane while the other 3 babies slept, Derek found her quietly crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, kneeling beside her chair. "Nothing's wrong," she whispered. "I'm just thinking about that woman, their birth mother. She'll never know how beautiful they are, how perfect. She's missing everything." Derek nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe someday they'll want to find her." "I hope she finds peace," Monica said, whatever her reasons were. "I can't help but be grateful she gave us the family we always wanted." The years passed in a whirlwind of milestones, first smiles, first steps, first words, multiplied by 4. The quadruplets developed distinct personalities from an early age. Alan was the leader, always first to try new things. Zara was the artist, covering the refrigerator with colorful drawings. Isaiah was quiet and thoughtful, often found with a book. And Diane was the peacemaker, settling disputes between her siblings with a wisdom beyond her years. On their 5th birthday, as they blew out the candles on 4 individual cakes, each child insisting on their own flavor, Monica captured the moment in a photograph that would later become famous, for beaming faces, for different personalities, united by an unbreakable bond. That same day, across town, Marta Bennett sat alone in her elegant living room, staring at a newspaper article about the miracle quads who had been adopted by a loving couple after being abandoned at birth. The article didn't name the biological parents but included a photo of the children at their birthday party. Mara's hands shook as she gazed at their faces, searching for any resemblance to herself or Chris, but all she saw were 4 beautiful children who belonged to someone else. After leaving the hospital that day 5 years ago, Mara had tried to move forward. She and Chris had divorced within a year, their marriage unable to survive the weight of unspoken blame and regret. Chris had quickly remarried and moved to California, seemingly unburdened by the past. Marta had not been so lucky. Unable to face another pregnancy, she had thrown herself into her career as an interior designer. On the surface, she was successful and independent, but inside, she carried a wound that never healed, 4 small wounds, to be precise. Impulsively, she cut out the newspaper article and placed it in a small wooden box where she kept her most private treasures, the baby hat she had knitted, a copy of the original sonogram, and now this, her first glimpse of the children in 5 years. On their 10th birthday, the quadruplets faced a new challenge. Derek had been diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's disease. While still able to teach, his condition required adjustments to their family life. The children, now old enough to understand, rallied around their father with a maturity that made Monica both proud and sad. They shouldn't have to grow up so fast, she thought. Alan took over mowing the lawn. Zara organized her father's medications. Isaiah read about the disease and explained it to his siblings in terms they could understand. Diane made sure her father was never alone when his tremors were bad. At their birthday dinner, Derek raised his glass in a toast, "To the 4 best children any parents could ask for. You are our miracle, our joy, and our strength." That night, after the children were asleep, Monica found a letter in the mail. The return address made her breath catch. It was from the fertility clinic involved in the original mix-up, the one that had been sued by the Bennetts years ago. "What is it?" Derek asked, noticing her expression. Monica opened the letter with trembling fingers. As she read, her face paled. "The clinic is closing," she explained. "They're notifying all affected families that their records will be transferred to a national database." "What does that mean for us?" "It means," Monica said slowly, "that when the children turn 18, they could potentially access information about their biological parents, and vice versa, the biological parents could request contact through the database." They sat in silence, considering the implications. For 10 years, they had been the only parents these children had ever known. The thought of someone else, especially someone who had once rejected them, coming into their lives was unsettling. "We always said we'd be honest with them," Derek reminded her. "We've told them they were adopted, we've answered their questions as they've come up. But we've never had to face the possibility of her actually coming back into their lives," Monica said. "What if she wants to know them now? What if she tries to?" She couldn't finish the sentence. The idea of losing her children was too painful to voice. What neither Monica nor Derek knew was that at that very moment, Marta Bennett was reading a similar letter, her heart racing at the possibility it presented. After 10 years of regret and silent grief, a door she thought permanently closed had cracked open just enough to let in a sliver of hope. As she reached for her phone to call her lawyer, Mara made a decision that would set in motion events that would change all their lives forever. Wait for it, these kids are about to uncover a twist that will change everything. 8 years passed since the letter from the fertility clinic arrived. Marta Bennett had contacted her lawyer that night but ultimately decided to wait. When they turn 18, she had told herself, that's the right time. She had spent those years preparing for the possibility of meeting the quadruplets, building her design business, buying a larger home with 4 spare bedrooms, and attending therapy to work through her guilt and regret. Now, as the quadruplets' 18th birthday approached, the Norris household buzzed with excitement and anticipation. College acceptance letters had begun arriving, and dinner conversations revolved around future plans and potential careers. Zara got another scholarship offer, Monica announced one evening, waving the letter proudly, a full ride to the Rhode Island School of Design. Zara beamed from across the table. Her artistic talents had only grown over the years, and her portfolio of digital illustrations had caught the attention of several prestigious art schools. "That's my sister," Alan said, giving her a fist bump. He had been accepted to Howard University on a track scholarship, his speed and determination making him one of the top high school athletes in the state. Isaiah, still the quietest of the 4, smiled warmly at his sister. "Congratulations, Zara." He had already secured early admission to MIT, where he planned to study computer science and mathematics. Only Diane seemed subdued, picking at her food without her usual enthusiasm. "What about you, Diane?" Derek asked, noticing her silence. His Parkinson's had progressed over the years, but with medication and treatment, he maintained much of his independence. "Any news from Northwestern?" "Not yet," she said, avoiding eye contact, "but there's something I need to talk to all of you about." The table fell silent. The quadruplets might have their own distinct personalities, but they remained deeply connected. The others could sense when something was troubling one of them. "I've been doing some research," Diane said carefully, "about our biological parents." Monica and Derek exchanged a quick glance. They had always answered the children's questions honestly but had never volunteered information about the circumstances of their birth. They had told them they were adopted as newborns when their biological parents couldn't care for them. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. "What kind of research?" Monica asked, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "I found the lawsuit," Diane said. "The one against the fertility clinic. I know we were supposed to be born to a white couple who rejected us when they saw we were black." The silence that followed was deafening. Alan's expression hardened. Zara's eyes filled with tears. And Isaiah stared at his plate, processing the information. "We were going to tell you everything after your birthday," Derek said gently. "We've always planned to. Why wait?" Alan demanded, his voice tight with emotion. "We're old enough to know the truth." "You're right," Monica said, reaching for her husband's hand. "You are, and we should have told you sooner. We wanted to protect you." "From what?" Zara asked, wiping away a tear. "From knowing we weren't wanted?" "That's not true," Derek said firmly. "You were wanted by us from the moment we saw you, but not by them," Isaiah said quietly, speaking for the first time. "Our biological parents?" Monica took a deep breath. "It's more complicated than that. The woman who carried you, your biological mother, she wasn't given much choice. Her husband made the decision." "How do you know that?" Diane pressed. Monica hesitated, then admitted, "My sister was your delivering doctor. She told me what she observed." "So our biological mother might have wanted us?" Zara asked, a hint of hope in her voice. "We don't know for sure," Derek answered honestly, "but what matters is that you're here with us, and we've been a family for 18 years. Nothing can change that." The conversation continued late into the night, with Monica and Derek answering every question as truthfully as they could. They explained about the fertility clinic mix-up, the Bennett's lawsuit, and how Patricia had helped expedite their adoption. As the quadruplets processed this new information, each reacted in their own way. Alan grew quiet and withdrawn, anger simmering beneath the surface. Zara channeled her emotions into a series of powerful paintings. Isaiah delved deeper into research, trying to find out more about the Bennetts. And Diane, always the peacemaker, focused on supporting her siblings while privately making plans of her own. A week later, Diane sat at her computer, her finger hovering over the submit button on the National Donor Sibling Registry website. She had created a profile, hoping to leave a message for their biological parents if they ever searched the database. "What are you doing?" Alan asked, appearing in her doorway. Startled, she quickly minimized the screen. "Nothing." Alan crossed the room and reopened the web page, his expression darkening as he read what she had written. "To our biological parents, we are the quadruplets born on May 15, 2005. We are healthy, happy, and loved. If you ever want to know about us, we are open to contact." "Are you serious?" Alan demanded. "They threw us away, Diane, like we were nothing, and now you want to invite them back into our lives?" "I just want to understand," Diane argued. "Don't you have questions? Don't you wonder why? And besides, we don't even know if they'll ever see this message." "I don't need to understand people who could abandon their own children because of the color of their skin," Alan retorted. "And I don't want them in my life ever." He stormed out, leaving Diane torn between loyalty to her brother and her own desire for answers. After a long moment, she closed the web page without submitting the profile. She needed time to think. What Diane didn't know was that across town, Marta Bennett had already created her own profile on the registry. For months, she had been checking daily, hoping for some sign that the quadruplets might be open to contact. With their 18th birthday just weeks away, her anticipation had grown almost unbearable. On a rainy Tuesday evening, as Marta was closing her design studio, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her lawyer's name. "Marta, we've received a response from the registry," he said without preamble. "The Norris family, the adoptive parents, they're willing to arrange a meeting." Marta's legs gave way, and she sank into her chair. A meeting with all four of them? Yes, but there are conditions, her lawyer cautioned. They want to meet you first, without the children, and they've made it clear that this doesn't mean ongoing contact unless the quadruplets themselves decide they want that. Of course, Marta agreed quickly. Whatever they want, when? This Saturday, at their home. After hanging up, Marta sat in her darkened studio, tears streaming down her face. After 18 years of regret and silent grief, she would finally see the family that had raised her children, the family she could have had if she'd been stronger, if she'd stood up to Chris. What she didn't know was that the meeting had been arranged without Alan's knowledge or consent. Monica and Derek had discussed it with Isaiah, Zara, and Diane, who had all expressed a cautious willingness to consider meeting Marta eventually, but they had decided to wait to tell Alan, knowing his opposition would be fierce. We'll meet her first, Derek had reasoned, then we can decide together whether to tell the kids. But secrets have a way of escaping, and as Marta prepared for the meeting that could change everything, Alan was about to make a discovery that would throw all their carefully laid plans into chaos. At track practice that Thursday, Alan's coach mentioned seeing a woman watching from the bleachers. She was there for almost an hour, he said. Blonde woman, very elegant. When I asked if I could help her, she said she was interested in the athletic program for a client's son. Seemed odd. Something about the description nagged at Alan. That evening, while using the family laptop, he noticed an email confirmation in the browser history, meeting confirmation, Bennett Norris, Saturday, 2 p.m. Bennett, the name from the lawsuit. As the pieces fell into place, Alan felt a wave of betrayal wash over him. His family, his parents, and even his siblings were going behind his back to meet the woman who had abandoned them at birth. In a flash of anger, he made a decision: he wouldn't wait for Saturday. He would confront Marta Bennett himself tonight and make sure she understood that not all of her children wanted her back in their lives. What Alan didn't realize was that his impulsive decision would lead to a confrontation that would reveal secrets far more shocking than any of them could have imagined. Finding Marta Bennett's address wasn't difficult for Alan. A quick internet search of Marta Bennett interior design led him to her company website, complete with a downtown studio address. As darkness fell, he drove his used Honda Civic into the business district, rehearsing the words he would say to the woman who had given birth to him, and then walked away. Rain pelted the windshield as he parked across the street from the elegant storefront with Bennett designs etched on frosted glass. Through the windows, he could see a light still on inside. Someone was working late. Alan sat frozen, hands gripping the steering wheel. Now that he was here, doubt crept in. What did he actually hope to accomplish? What could she possibly say that would make her abandonment acceptable? But the anger that had been building since Diane's revelation pushed him forward. He needed to look this woman in the eye, to make her see what she had thrown away. With determined steps, he crossed the street and pushed open the studio door. The small bell announced his entrance. "I'm sorry, we're closed," called a voice from the back office, "but if you'd like to make an appointment." Marta Bennett appeared from around a corner, elegant in a simple black dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Alan standing there, soaking wet from the rain. For a moment, neither spoke. Mara's hand flew to her throat, her eyes widening in recognition, not of Alan specifically, but of what he represented. Somehow, she knew instantly who he was. "You're one of them," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're one of my—" "Don't," Alan cut her off sharply. "Don't you dare call me your anything. You lost that right 18 years ago." Marta took a step back, steadying herself against a desk. "How did you find me?" "It wasn't hard," Alan replied coldly. "Easier than it was for you to walk away from 4 newborns, I'm guessing." Pain flashed across Mara's face. "You don't understand what happened." "I understand enough," Alan countered. "You and your husband expected white babies. When we came out black, you decided you didn't want us anymore. It's pretty simple." "No," Marta said, shaking her head emphatically. "That's not what happened, not for me." "Then what did happen?" Alan demanded. "Explain it to me." Marta gestured to a sitting area by the window. "Please," she said, "will you sit? I'll tell you everything." Against his better judgment, Alan followed her to the seating area but remained standing while she perched on the edge of a designer chair. My husband Chris and I had been trying to have children for years, Marta began. When we finally succeeded with IVF, we were overjoyed, but when you were born, her voice faltered. When we were born black, you were disgusted, Alan finished for her. No, Mara's response was immediate and fierce. I was shocked, yes, we both were, but I was never disgusted. You were beautiful, all four of you. Then why abandon us? Mara's eyes filled with tears. Chris gave me an ultimatum. He said he couldn't raise children that weren't his, that's how he put it. He said if I chose to keep you, our marriage would be over. Alan's expression didn't soften. So you chose him over us? I was weak, Marta admitted, a tear sliding down her cheek. I'd never stood up to Chris before. He controlled everything, our finances, our social life, even what I wore. I was afraid of being alone, of having no way to support 4 babies by myself. So you left us at the hospital and never looked back, Alan said flatly. That's not true, Marta insisted. I thought about you every day. I kept every scrap of information I could find about you. Our marriage fell apart anyway, Chris left me less than a year later. She reached for her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. From it, she extracted newspaper clippings, photos clearly cut from local papers, the Quadruplets at age 5 at their birthday party, Zara at 10 winning an art contest, Isaiah at 14 at a science fair, Alan himself at 16 setting a state track record. I've followed your lives from a distance, Marta said softly. I've regretted my decision every day since I made it. Alan stared at the collection of clippings, momentarily speechless. He hadn't expected this evidence of long-term regret, of attention paid to their lives. Does that change anything? He finally asked, his voice slightly less harsh. Are we supposed to forgive you now? No, Marta said, surprising him. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know the truth, and I want you to know that your birth was not the worst day of my life, it was the best. Walking away from you was the worst. Alan sat down finally, the weight of her words and his own emotions too heavy to bear standing. There's more, Marta said hesitantly, something I only learned years later, something I think you deserve to know. What? Alan asked, suddenly wary again. Chris knew about the mix-up before I did, Marta said. The fertility clinic called him when they realized their mistake, weeks before you were born. He kept it from me, let me go through the entire pregnancy believing you would look like us. Why would he do that? Because he had already started the lawsuit, she said. He thought if I knew, I might want to back out or keep you, which would complicate his case. He wanted the biggest settlement possible. Alan felt sick. So we were just pawns in his game? To him, yes, Marta admitted sadly, but not to me, not really. I just wasn't strong enough to fight for you. They sat in silence for a long moment, the rain tapping against the window the only sound in the room. There's something else you should know, Marta said finally. Your biological parents, your genetic parents, I found them. Alan's head snapped up. What? How? Part of the settlement with the clinic included information about the donors, Marta said. Chris wanted it to strengthen his case. I kept those records, and years later, I hired a private investigator to track them down. Who are they? Alan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Their names are Matthew and Lila Johnson. They were graduate students who donated to the fertility clinic to earn money for tuition. They never knew their donation resulted in 4 births. The clinic violated their own policy by using all the viable embryos from a single donor for one recipient. Are they still together? Alan couldn't help asking. Marta nodded. They're professors now at Howard University, actually, where I believe you're planning to attend in the fall. They have 2 children of their own, a son who's 14 and a daughter who's 12. The information hit Alan like a physical blow. His biological parents were professors at the very university he had chosen. Was it coincidence, or had some unconscious connection drawn him there? Have you told them about us? He asked. No, Marta said. I thought that should be your decision, yours and your siblings. But I have their contact information if you want it. Alan sat back, overwhelmed. He had come here to confront a villain from his past but instead found a complicated, flawed human being who had made a terrible mistake she had regretted ever since. "I don't know what to do with all this," he admitted. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," Marta said gently. "I've waited 18 years to tell you the truth. I can wait longer for you to process it." As Alan stood to leave, Marta made no move to stop him, but she did say one more thing. "I'm scheduled to meet your parents on Saturday. Will you tell them I saw you tonight?" Alan paused at the door. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I need to think." Driving home through the rain, Alan's mind raced with everything he had learned. By the time he pulled into his driveway, he had made a decision. This wasn't just his story, it belonged to all four of them. His siblings deserved to know the truth too before Saturday's meeting. Inside, he found Diane waiting up for him in the kitchen. "Where have you been?" she asked worriedly. "It's almost midnight." "I went to see her," Alan said simply. "Marta Bennett?" Diane's eyes widened. "What? How? Why?" "I found out about the meeting on Saturday. I was angry that no one told me." "We were going to," Diane insisted. "Mom and Dad wanted to meet her first to make sure she's not what we thought," Alan interrupted, "or at least it's more complicated than we thought." Quickly, he related everything Marta had told him. As he spoke, Isaiah and Zara appeared in the doorway, drawn by the serious conversation. They listened in stunned silence. "She knows who our biological parents are?" Zara asked when he finished. "Our actual genetic parents?" Alan nodded. "And they're professors at Howard, where I'm going in the fall." "Are you going to contact them?" Isaiah asked quietly. "I don't know," Alan admitted. "I'm still processing all of this." Diane, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "We should tell Mom and Dad about you meeting Marta." The others nodded in agreement. "Tomorrow," Alan decided. "Let's tell them tomorrow. Tonight, I just need to sleep." As he headed to his room, Alan didn't notice the light under his parents' door or hear the soft sound of Monica crying. Unknown to the quadruplets, their mother had overheard everything from the hallway. The revelation about the biological parents, something not even she and Derek had known, filled her with a new fear. For 18 years, they had been the only parents these four remarkable young people had known. Now, suddenly, there were others in the picture: Marta, with her years of regret and collection of mementos, and the Johnsons, who had never even known about the quadruplets but shared their DNA. As Derek held her, Monica whispered her deepest fear: "What if we lose them?" "We won't," Derek promised, but there was uncertainty in his voice. What none of them knew was that at that very moment, Marta Bennett was making a phone call that would change everything once again. "Hello," answered a sleepy voice. "Dr. Johnson? Matthew Johnson?" Marta asked, her heart racing. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Marta Bennett." "You don't know me, but I gave birth to your children 18 years ago." Morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as the Norris family sat in tense silence. Alan had just finished telling Monica and Derek about his encounter with Marta Bennett the night before. "I should have told you where I was going," he admitted. "I was just so angry when I found out about the meeting." Monica reached across the table and took his hand. "We should have told you about it. We were trying to protect you, all of you, but you're adults now. You deserve to make your own choices." "What did you think of her?" Derek asked quietly, his hands steadier today than they had been in weeks. Alan considered the question. "She's not what I expected. She seems genuinely sorry." "Do you believe what she told you?" Monica asked, about her ex-husband forcing the decision. "I think I do," Alan replied, surprising himself. "She's been following our lives all these years. She kept newspaper clippings, photos, and she found our biological parents." Monica and Derek exchanged a look. "That's something we need to discuss," Derek said carefully. "How do you all feel about potentially meeting the Johnsons?" The quadruplets looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. "I want to," Zara said first. I've always wondered where my artistic ability came from. None of you can even draw a straight line. She smiled, softening the words. I'm curious too, Isaiah added, from a scientific perspective. It would be interesting to see what traits we inherited. I think we should meet them, Diane agreed, but I don't want them to think we're looking for new parents. You're our parents. She looked directly at Monica and Derek. All eyes turned to Alan, who had been the most adamant against meeting Marta just days before. Howard University, he said finally. I chose it without knowing they were there. Maybe that means something. He took a deep breath. Yes, I want to meet them, but I don't want to meet them alone. Of course not, Monica assured him. We'll be there with you, all of us. The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. Monica frowned. We're not expecting anyone, are we? Derek shook his head and went to answer the door. The family could hear murmured voices from the entryway, then Derek returned with Marta Bennett beside him. I'm sorry to come unannounced, she said, looking nervous but determined, but after meeting Alan last night, I realized I couldn't wait until tomorrow. There's something you all need to know. The tension in the room was palpable as Marta stood awkwardly, clutching her purse. Please, sit down, Monica said, her innate hospitality winning out over her apprehension. Marta sat on the edge of the sofa. I did something last night that I should have consulted with you about first, she began, looking at the quadruplets. I called Matthew Johnson your biological father. You what? Alan's voice rose in disbelief. I know I shouldn't have, Marta admitted, but after meeting you, Alan, it felt wrong to keep such important information from them any longer. They never knew about you, they deserved to know. What did he say? Isaiah asked, his intellectual curiosity overriding his shock. He was stunned, of course, Marta replied. At first, he thought it was some kind of scam, but when I explained everything, the fertility clinic mix-up, the lawsuit, how I found their information, he started to believe me. He asked for proof, which I promised to provide, and then he asked if you would be willing to meet them. Both of them? Zara asked. Him and our biological mother? Marta nodded. Leah and Matthew are still married. They've been together since college. They have 2 children, a son who's 14 and a daughter who's 12. We have half-siblings, Diane whispered, the concept clearly overwhelming. Biologically, yes, Monica said, her voice wavering slightly. Marta looked at Monica and Derek with genuine regret in her eyes. I know this must be incredibly difficult for you. You've raised these amazing young people, given them everything I couldn't. I'm not here to disrupt your family. Then why are you here? Derek asked, not unkindly. Because I made a terrible mistake 18 years ago, Marta said simply, and I've spent every day since then trying to figure out how to make it right. When the fertility clinic notified me about the records being accessible once the quadruplets turned 18, I saw it as my chance not to replace you, never that, but to at least explain, to apologize, to answer any questions they might have. And now you've involved the Johnsons too, Monica noted, a hint of accusation in her voice. Yes, Marta acknowledged. I realize now I should have waited, should have consulted with all of you first, but Matthew and Lila are eager to meet the quadruplets. They're coming to town next weekend. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. I think we need some time, Derek said finally. This is a lot to take in. Of course, Marta agreed, standing to leave. I understand completely. Here's my card with my number, please call me when you're ready to talk more. After she left, the family remained in stunned silence until Zara spoke. 2 more sets of parents, she said softly. It's like going from having no origin story to suddenly having too many. Monica blinked back tears. No matter what happens with Marta or the Johnsons, nothing changes between us. We are your parents, we always will be. We know that, Mom, Diane assured her, crossing the room to hug Monica tightly. As the quadruplets dispersed to process the morning's revelations, Monica and Derek remained in the living room. Are you okay? Derek asked his wife, noticing the worry lines around her eyes. I don't know, Monica admitted. Part of me is terrified that meeting these people will change everything, that they'll see some reflection of themselves in the Johnsons and feel a connection they've never had with us. That's not how family works, Derek said gently, taking her hand. Family isn't just DNA, it's 18 years of bandaging scraped knees and helping with homework. It's showing up every day through tantrums and triumphs. No biological connection can replace that. Monica squeezed his hand. I hope you're right. The week passed in a blur of preparations. After much discussion, the Norris family agreed to meet the Johnsons that Saturday, the same day originally scheduled for the formal meeting with Marta. They decided to meet at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant, with both Marta and the Johnsons present. As Saturday approached, each member of the family dealt with their anxiety in their own way. Alan ran longer distances than usual, pushing his body to exhaustion. Zara painted furiously, creating a series of abstract works that captured her tumultuous emotions. Isaiah researched genetic inheritance patterns, finding comfort in scientific facts. Diane organized and reorganized her room, seeking order amid the chaos of her feelings. Monica threw herself into cooking elaborate meals no one could eat, while Derek spent hours in his workshop, his trembling hands finding steadiness in familiar tasks. The morning of the meeting, the quadruplets gathered in Alan's room for a private conversation. Whatever happens today, Alan said, looking at his siblings seriously, we stick together always. Always, they echoed, forming a circle and joining hands the way they had done since childhood. At 1 p.m., the Norris family arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes before the scheduled meeting time. They were shown to a private dining room with a large round table. A round table, Derek observed, no head, no hierarchy, good choice. They sat together on one side, instinctively forming a united front. At precisely 1:30 p.m., there was a knock on the door, and Marta entered, looking elegant but nervous in a simple blue dress. Thank you for coming, she said, taking a seat opposite them. The Johnsons just texted, they're parking now. Minutes later, the door opened again, and a couple entered. Dr. Matthew Johnson was tall and distinguished, with close-cropped salt-and-pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Lila Johnson was shorter, with warm brown skin and the same artistic cheekbones as Zara. They stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the quadruplets with undisguised wonder. Oh my God, Lila whispered, her hand covering her mouth. They look just like my father. The resemblance was indeed striking. Though each of the quadruplets had their own unique features, they shared the same rich brown skin tone, the same high cheekbones, the same almond-shaped eyes as Lila. Matthew approached the table slowly, as if in a dream. This is overwhelming, he admitted. When Marta called, I didn't really believe it, but looking at you now, please, sit down, Monica invited, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. As the Johnsons took their seats, an awkward silence fell over the table. How does one begin such a conversation? What words could possibly bridge the gap between strangers connected by blood but separated by circumstance? It was Diane who finally broke the silence. We have questions, she said simply, about you, about your family, medical history, about what we might have inherited from you. Matthew nodded. Of course, we'll answer anything we can, but first, Lila added, we want you to know something important. We're not here to disrupt your family. From everything Marta has told us, you have wonderful parents who have given you an amazing life. They have, Zara confirmed, reaching for Monica's hand under the table. We're incredibly grateful for the opportunity to meet you, Matthew continued, to see these remarkable young adults who, in some small way, are connected to us. The conversation gradually became easier as they shared stories and discovered surprising similarities. Isaiah and Matthew had the same analytical approach to